Breaking crypto news today. Grayscale has reportedly withdrawn its ETF filings connected to three major altcoins, Cardano, Hedera, and Polkadot. The news has immediately attracted attention across the crypto market because ETF approval has become one of the biggest narratives for altcoins. For investors, an ETF filing can create expectations that a cryptocurrency could eventually gain easier access to traditional financial markets. So when a major asset manager like Grayscale withdraws filings, the obvious question is, why did they withdraw them? Does this mean Cardano, Hedera, and Polkadot ETFs are dead? Could the applications return later? And most importantly, what could this mean for ADA, HBAR, and DOT? In this video, we will break down everything you need to know. Welcome back to Shabanverse, your source for simple crypto news and market updates. Let's get started. What happened? According to company filings, Grayscale has withdrawn its ETF filings related to Cardano, Hedera, and Polkadot. Grayscale is one of the most recognized digital asset investment companies in the world. The company became especially famous because of its Bitcoin trust, which eventually played an important role in the development of spot Bitcoin ETF products in the United States. Because of that history, whenever Grayscale files an ETF application for an altcoin, the crypto community pays close attention. This time, however, the company has taken a different step. The filings connected to Cardano, Hedera, and Polkadot have been withdrawn. That does not automatically mean these cryptocurrencies will never receive ETFs, but it does mean that these particular filings are no longer moving forward in their current form. And that distinction is extremely important. What is an ETF? Before going deeper, let's quickly understand what an ETF actually is. ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund. An ETF is an investment product that trades on a traditional stock exchange. Instead of buying and managing cryptocurrency directly through a crypto exchange or wallet, an investor can potentially gain exposure through a regulated financial product. For example, with a spot Bitcoin ETF, investors can gain exposure to Bitcoin without personally managing private keys or using a crypto wallet. This is one reason why crypto ETFs are considered important. They can potentially make digital assets easier to access for traditional investors, institutions, retirement accounts, and other market participants. So naturally, an ETF connected to Cardano, Hedera, or Polkadot could potentially expand access to these assets. That is why ETF filings create so much excitement. Why is Grayscale's withdrawal important? Now let's talk about the bigger picture. Grayscale withdrawing these filings does not necessarily mean the companies or networks behind ADA, HBAR, and DOT have failed. It also does not mean that these cryptocurrencies are being removed from the market. The important point is that the specific ETF filings have been withdrawn. There can be many reasons why an asset manager may withdraw an ETF filing. The company could decide that the timing is not right. Regulatory conditions could change. The company could be waiting for additional guidance from regulators. Market conditions could also influence the decision. Or the company could eventually decide to submit a revised filing with a different structure. So investors should be careful about interpreting the headline too aggressively. A withdrawal is not automatically the same thing as a permanent rejection. What about Cardano? Let's start with Cardano, commonly known by its ticker ADA. Cardano has one of the largest and most active communities in the crypto industry. The project has focused heavily on decentralization, smart contracts, scalability, and long-term blockchain development. For years, ADA holders have been waiting for greater institutional adoption. An ETF could potentially have been another major step toward bringing Cardano closer to traditional financial markets. That's why this withdrawal is disappointing for some ADA investors. However, investors should remember something important. The withdrawal of one ETF filing does not change Cardano's underlying blockchain overnight. The Cardano network continues to operate. Developers continue building, users continue interacting with the ecosystem, and the broader crypto market continues to evolve. So the long-term story of Cardano cannot be determined by one ETF filing alone. At the same time, ETF developments can affect market sentiment in the short term. If traders were expecting an ETF approval, a withdrawal could create selling pressure. But whether that pressure becomes a major trend depends on many other factors, including Bitcoin's direction, overall liquidity, regulation, and investor demand. What about Hedera? Next, we have Hedera with the ticker HBAR. Hedera has positioned itself differently from many traditional blockchain projects. It uses a technology known as hashgraph, and the network has attracted attention because of its focus on enterprise use cases and large organizations. HBAR has developed a strong following among crypto investors. An ETF product could potentially have introduced HBAR to a completely different category of investors. But once again, the withdrawal of the filing does not mean Hedera itself has stopped developing. It simply means the particular ETF process is no longer moving forward under the withdrawn filing. For HBAR investors, the bigger question now is whether another ETF filing could appear in the future, and that is something the market will continue watching. What about Polkadot? The third cryptocurrency involved is Polkadot, or DOT. Polkadot has become well known for its interoperability vision. The project aims to allow different blockchain networks to communicate and work together more efficiently. DOT has also developed a significant ecosystem of developers, applications, and users. For years, the crypto market has debated whether DOT could become one of the major institutional digital assets. An ETF could potentially have strengthened that narrative. So the withdrawal is another setback for the ETF stories surrounding DOT. But again, investors should separate two different things. The first is the development of Polkadot as a blockchain network. The second is the creation of an ETF based on DOT. These are not the same thing. A withdrawn ETF filing does not shut down Polkadot. It simply removes one potential investment vehicle from the table for now. Could Grayscale file again? This is perhaps the biggest question. Could Grayscale come back with new filings? The answer is that investors should not automatically assume the door is permanently closed. Financial companies can modify strategies. Regulatory conditions can change. ETF structures can be redesigned. And companies can submit new applications in the future. The crypto ETF market has already shown how quickly things can change. Bitcoin ETFs took years of regulatory uncertainty before the market eventually saw major progress. Ethereum followed with its own ETF developments. That has created a broader debate over whether more cryptocurrencies could eventually receive similar investment products. Therefore, today's withdrawal could simply be part of a larger regulatory and strategic process. But until a new filing appears, investors should treat the current situation carefully. What could this mean for ADA, HBAR, and DOT prices? Now let's talk about the market. When an ETF filing is withdrawn, traders may interpret the news negatively. Why? Because ETF approval can potentially bring new capital into an asset. If investors were expecting that possibility and the filing disappears, some traders may decide to reduce their positions. That can create short-term volatility. However, price movements are never guaranteed. Crypto markets are influenced by many factors at the same time. Bitcoin's price, Ethereum's performance, interest rates, global liquidity, regulatory announcements, exchange activity, whale movements, institutional demand, and overall market sentiment. So it would be a mistake to say Grayscale withdrew the filing, therefore ADA, HBAR, and DOT must crash. Markets simply do not work that way. The more accurate interpretation is that the withdrawal removes one potential positive catalyst, at least for now. Why are crypto ETFs so important? There is a much bigger story behind all of this. Crypto ETFs are important because they represent a bridge between the traditional financial system and digital assets. For years, buying cryptocurrency required users to understand exchanges, wallets, private keys, blockchain transactions, and security. ETFs can simplify that experience. A traditional investor may already understand how to buy stocks or ETFs through a brokerage account. This is why institutional investors are paying close attention to crypto ETFs. And this is also why every ETF filing creates speculation. Is this bad news for crypto? Not necessarily. In fact, we should look at the broader market. Crypto regulation is still evolving. The United States is continuing to develop its approach toward digital assets. Asset managers are experimenting with different products. Regulators are evaluating different structures. And investors are becoming more familiar with cryptocurrencies. So one withdrawn filing should not be treated as a verdict on the entire altcoin market. The bigger question is whether regulators and financial institutions will eventually create a framework where multiple digital assets can have regulated investment products. If that happens, today's story could eventually become just another chapter in the much larger evolution of crypto markets. What should investors watch next? If you are following ADA, HBAR, or DOT, there are several things worth watching. First, watch for any new ETF filings. If Grayscale or another major asset manager submits a new application, that could immediately become important news. Second, watch regulatory developments in the United States. Changes in SEC policy can have a major impact on crypto investment products. Third, watch institutional interest. Are major investment firms increasing exposure to these assets? Are new financial products being created? Are exchanges expanding support? And fourth, don't ignore the overall crypto market. If Bitcoin enters a strong bullish trend, altcoins can benefit from increased risk appetite. But if Bitcoin experiences a major correction, even strong altcoins can face significant selling pressure. The bigger picture. The most important lesson from today's news is simple. ETF filings are important, but they are not the entire crypto story. Cardano has its own development roadmap. Hedera has its own. So what happened today? Grayscale has withdrawn its ETF filings connected to Cardano, Hedera, and Polkadot. For investors who were expecting these products to move forward, the news is clearly disappointing. But it is important not to confuse a withdrawn filing with a permanent rejection. The situation could change. New applications could appear. Regulatory conditions could evolve, and another asset manager could potentially pursue similar products. For ADA, HBAR, and DOT holders, the best approach is to watch the next developments, rather than reacting emotionally to a single headline. Crypto markets can move very quickly. One day a filing can be withdrawn. Another day, a new application can appear, and the market can change direction in just hours. So always do your own research and manage risk carefully. What do you think about Grayscale withdrawing the Cardano, Hedera, and Polkadot ETF filings? Do you think these ETF applications could return in the future? And which one has the strongest long-term potential? ADA, HBAR, or